Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today on the show we're going to be talking all about content longevity and what actually happens when, I don't know, theoretically a platform may go away. Obviously, there's a bit of context for that one here today, and we're definitely going to talk about that specifically. But I think it's a good opportunity to reflect on platform instability and hedging your bets and thinking about the things that you've created. And that includes not just the content itself, but also the audience that you've got out there. But we are going live to all the various places. So as always, I'm forever trying to make this thing happen. Hashtag Team Live if you're watching live, or hashtag Team Replay. But how are you doing, Sam?
Good. It's been like a big roller coaster week. Literally, there were some roller coasters involved as we took my youngest to Universal Studios for her birthday. So we did some of that whole park stuff, and then just like some bad news hit, and then some potentially good news hit with like a super secret project that hopefully is launching next week, maybe. So I can't really say much about that right now, but there's a lot of stuff up in the air and we'll see how it goes. What's going on with you, John?
It's always. I say this every week. It's been such a blur, and I must admit, I have this. I'm not really a people person at the best of times. So often I will receive comments and I will late at night and I'll be like, I'll deal with that tomorrow, and then I just completely forget about it. And I think I have offended somebody during the week, and I apologize because that was not my intention to do at all. But it has been a busy week. I have been having some issues with my camera. I think I figured it out. I mean, we'll find out today live in the way that you can only find out things during a live session, whether that's working. I did actually also buy the Elgato Facecam Mark II, so I've been having a bit of play with that. It's interesting, and again, I don't want to go on too big a tangent, and we'll check in the chat in just a second. But I guess the thing that still throws me a little bit about webcams is sort of the wide-angle lens, and as someone that's working from a very particular corner of a very particular sized room, I'm kind of really trying to constrain how much it actually picks up in the shows. And obviously we can do things with OBS and stuff, but it is a little bit weird in that way. But let's check in with the chat. Hello to Ender Trading, who's watching from Kuala Lumpur, so catching us live for once. I know you're in finance, but you're in a different part of the world every time I see you, so it's a lot of travel. I must admit, I'm a bit of a homebody. I barely leave the house, so it's not my idea of a good time, but I know lots of people love it. Hello to people watching on YouTube. Hello to Raindrops and Ripples over on Twitch. Hello to Saeed, who's Team Cat, always watching from Germany. And hello to Mark, who's watching on LinkedIn. So Saeed, did you live stream from the roller coaster?
No,
I can't say
no.
that's anything I've ever done, but maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, I don't have a scenario that I would trust the camera not to fly off of my hand in. I guess I do have like a body mount for a GoPro, but I couldn't live stream that. I could video it though.
And hello to Business Growth Ready. So let's get stuck in. And in some ways, I didn't really want to talk about TikTok specifically this week because I don't do a lot on TikTok, but I know Sam does, and I know as an American, if it's going to affect anybody, it's going to affect him. And I felt kind of bad last week because I made some jokes during the week, but you really did seem to be taking the potential news that TikTok might be going away. It might also be taking away CapCut, which I know is your video editor of choice. So I guess, first of all, let's just check in. How are you feeling? How are you coping?
I mean, right now it hasn't really hit. There's been unfortunately, a lot of confirmation that it probably does include CapCut, which I'm not happy about. Like, moreover than TikTok, CapCut is something I use all the time for every platform because this is just a real nice, video editor. So, like, what's with the collateral damage on this? CapCut's not spying on anyone. But yeah. I mean, hopefully the software itself, like, it'll continue to be useful for potentially a few years after everything goes downhill. If everything goes downhill, it just won't have any updates, and it won't have some of the the web connections, like probably some of those templates, those will go away. You got to download all of those in advance. But yeah, so aside from that, it still really hasn't hit me. I think there's a little bit of faith that I'm holding on to that it'll go to 4 or 5 different giant court cases, and somehow it'll get saved. I know a lot of people. It's funny because people are very polarized by this. Like they're either you know on board for like we got to take this thing down, or like they're like, but this is my livelihood. And there's a fair amount of the in between as well. But yeah, it's interesting for sure.
And I guess that is something that is definitely true because, people I talk to, they're either like, I love TikTok, it's my entire life, I've got a TikTok shop, I've built this community, I've been part of Book Talk, or, there are all these communities that have been built on this platform specifically. And then there are a whole bunch of people that have never experienced it. Like they've never used the app, they've never gone to the website, and they don't really care. And in a lot of ways, we don't really want to talk about the politics of this. But I guess in some ways, the thing that I kind of grappled with a little bit during the week was just acknowledging that there are lots of things that are outside of my control. And in some ways, if TikTok goes, if it stays, that's going to have nothing to do with me directly. And I kind of just need to find a way to be okay with however this plays out. And again, as someone who's not an American, I don't know if the rest of the world will follow suit. Like there's just so many things you don't know. And you can't know. And go.
I was going to say, we don't want to get into all of the will it, won't it kind of stuff, but along the lines of TikTok being banned, 2 days ago, Live.Space shut down its doors. So it announced 30 days ago that was going to be it. And about 2 weeks ago, it cut off all live streaming services. And then as of, 2 days ago, you go to their webpage and it's just a big blurry facade of what it once was. And at the same time, new platforms are constantly coming out. And we've always maintained, like, be careful to chase after the shiny thing, because this is exactly what'll happen.
And I was going to talk about this more in the next segment, but I think it might be worthwhile talking about now because there are lots of social media platforms. There are lots of video hosting sites. These things, there's a new one sort of spun up every single day. And there's, you hear this advice not to spread yourself too thinly, not to be everywhere. And I think in some ways that's useful advice because you do have finite energy, you do have finite time. But in a lot of ways, the thing that I like to do is that if I've created something and I'm giving it away for free, it doesn't, and especially in terms of video content, it doesn't usually take a lot for me to go to a site, press the upload button, throw it on there, and add some text around it. And I do that not really because I'm expecting to have a great presence on that particular website, but I do that in the interest of sort of hedging my bets a little bit. So if it does turn out that maybe Threads suddenly becomes the new hot thing, I'm not starting from zero. Like, I don't have hundreds of connections. I probably don't have that many at all because it's not a place I hang out very much. But I think we kind of need to acknowledge that different people have different preferences. And I think there are certainly social media tools. There are different nuances with different platforms as well. But in some ways, I think the worst thing you can do is sort of silo yourself onto one platform and only talk to, one very small segment of the entire internet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've lived through this, I don't know, 4 times over at this point, I think. Like back in, the early 2000s, had my heyday on a site called Stickam, which was probably the YouTube of live streaming at the time. It was, something that rivaled Twitch. Like Twitch was nothing at that point. And I was one of the most watched people there. And then eventually, something like 2013, maybe they shut their doors. And it was like, all these companies do it on like February. So it's not even 30 days. You have 28 days to figure it out. And at that time, I'd never even conceived that this was a thing that would happen, is that one of these little like websites would go away, right? And then I saw it again with like Daily Booth, and then Mixer and Mob Crush, where I worked. And
Yes,
and
I was just going to acknowledge
I
the
wore this
t-shirt
on
you're wearing
purpose.
today.
Solidarity. Yeah, I was on the other side of it at Mob Crush when it was like, you know, go now and tell the 100,000 users we have they have 28 days. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. That's all we're gonna. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, like the only thing I say about Stickam is please don't go to that website today. Somebody has
Oh
built
God,
that
no! Don't do
domain, and
that. Yeah,
it's
it's
not
no. Somebody,
appropriate
it's bad.
for. Definitely not safe for work. So I just want to check in with the comments. So Saeed is saying that it raises a beneficial question
Yes.
about not focusing on one platform, especially for
Yeah.
business. But I guess the other thing too, like there's always the possibility that you get
Yes.
locked out, you get hacked, you lose the accounts, maybe the account gets suspended. Like there is a real danger in putting all your eggs in that one particular basket. Hello to Tech Troublemaker, who as true to his name, is saying, "What is TikTok?" And Roy is a classic example of someone who's always been very uncomfortable with the idea of TikTok and CapCut, and at least in my interactions, I don't know if that's a fair thing I just said, Roy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that we've had discussions about that in the past. Hello to Walter Strong from the Huddle, who's joining us tonight. Great to have your company. And again, another classic example, the Google Graveyard. Roy's saying that he had a huge following on Google Plus. Even Google Wave was like one of those products that was amazing, and yet they just couldn't find a business case for it, and it just sort of went away.
Yeah, I get real nervous about anything being acquired by like Google or Microsoft because they have such a history of like, we'll just buy that thing, and in a year when we can't make it work, we'll just ship it out for parts. Yeah.
And like I didn't really want to go down this rabbit hole either, but StreamYard has been acquired again recently.
Yeah.
So we're all sort of waiting with bated breath to see what happens in that space as well. But
yeah, it seems positive so far, so that's good. But yeah,
although I'm already missing the town hall meetings with Dan Engage. I thought they were amazing, and I'm hoping that the new owners will do something similar because that was really really quite wonderful. But anyway, I guess in some ways, like TikTok, whether you're interested in TikTok or not, I think we do need to be mindful of platform instability, of sort of managing risk as a content creator, and I think that's kind of the broader conversation that we're having today. I guess, Sam, before we start to wrap up this first segment, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on in terms of TikTok specifically?
God, if I start, it would be I would go on for the rest of the show at this point. It's just, yeah, I mean, you love it, you hate it, but is that the power we want the government to have? No, that's not the show we're doing. The show we're doing is, whether it goes away or doesn't, this should open your eyes to not sticking to one place. And let's talk about spreading our wings after this. Look,
okay, let's do it. Awesome. So this is the video and live streaming show. We'll be back in a moment and talk about really, is your content, perennial, or is it really timely? And what does that actually mean in terms of your ability to reuse that?
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I'd talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about content longevity, what happens when platforms go away, and how we can actually manage that risk as a content creator. So I guess, first of all, I guess the place I want to go to in terms of this conversation is really having eyes for your own content and deciding whether it's the things that you're creating, are they trend based, are they very timely, or are they more perennial? And because I guess the classic example, and we did an entire show on this, but those couple of weeks when every video on TikTok was about Barbie, the Barbie movie specifically, and being just Ken or some version of a Barbie. Obviously, that tapped into a cultural zeitgeist and probably a marketing campaign as well. But I'm imagining there's probably very little demand if you were on TikTok with all those videos and you want to now port them over to somewhere else. So, Sam, what do you think we should keep in mind in terms of whether our content is perennial, evergreen, or whether it's really very specifically inside a time context, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, when you start to do a channel, or if you have a channel, like, you need to be aware of what your sort of core value is. Like, what is the thing that you are offering your viewers first and foremost, and build a library of content around that thing. So, in a case like ours, we're talking about live streaming, we're talking about video creation, OBS, and those sorts of things. So while there are trending things that are out there, we can apply those trends to the things we're already doing, and we'll have like that initial library to point back to and be like, yeah, if you liked this funny, I'm a live streamer who's watching the Barbie movie, but I don't know what that video would be. They can go through and find a more educational video, on the topic that you are presenting to people. So, I saw a statistic somewhere that basically said 80% of your content should be perennial, which to me seems crazy, but take that with a grain of salt.
And again, I feel like this is one of those classic examples where Sam and I are probably quite different, because as much as I believe in the power of content, as much as I like to write and record and put videos out and do live streams and stuff, it takes me a lot of effort to get in front of a camera or a microphone. And whenever I do that, I'm like, if this is going to be something that is only going to be popular for 2 or 3 days, I'm not going to put the same sort of production values into it than I would for a video that I'm hoping to last a lot longer. And I think in some ways, like, as someone who creates tutorial videos, like, sometimes the interfaces change. Like, sometimes there are little things that change, but generally speaking, I really want to drill down into those things that, will still be basically relevant, whether you see them this week or in a year's time. And I know that there's probably a shelf life on probably everything we do, but again, I kind of want to put my focus on things that may have a longer shelf life. Roy is talking about reposting videos on Rumble. Not sure why, but something to play around with and see what happens. Not sure it's worth the effort. Sam, is that a platform you've played with? And again, I don't know if this is fair, but the reputation of Rumble seems to be it's very ideological, shall we say?
Yes, I have avoided it because it's a very polarizing platform, and I don't need to be on it. There's tons of platforms and apps out there that you can put all these things on, but for the most part, I'm sticking with the big three, which is like, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then also, while it's around, TikTok. There is a handful of others that occasionally I will play with as well, but it's strictly reposting. It's never anything where I'm like going into it and looking for stuff to reply to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess like you've kind of got to vet these platforms yourself. And again, like there are certain, and I'm trying so hard not to be political this week, but there are certain places that just have certain reputations, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stay away from that one. But Saeed says, trendy things can attract traffic to channels, don't you think? They bring in new fans and followers for the perennial content. They certainly have the potential to, and I guess like if you look at Saeed on LinkedIn, for example, today is May the 4th in some parts of the world. I know Sam isn't quite there yet, I don't think, through the wonders of time zone, but he did sort of combine his love of Miro with a Darth Vader Star Wars reference. So sometimes they can, but I guess there is always that danger, and especially on TikTok, if you get really popular for doing the latest trending dance, and that's not the heart of who you are and what you do, that can potentially be a problem. Because they, and I guess that's something I don't actually share a lot of content on TikTok, but it is such a guilty pleasure for me to just scroll and watch the things I'm interested in. But my impression of the platform generally is that you do get rewarded for repeating yourself. And it almost doesn't matter what you're showing me. I probably enjoy it the first 90 times, but after that, I'm usually done. So there is a bit of a danger there, I think.
Yeah, I could never hear anyone say the weird thing again and be pretty happy. I don't know if everyone gets that reference, but yeah, essentially what Saeed had said is the point I was trying to make earlier. Like you have your perennial content to back you up and to point to from the future, but you do the trends when they're there just to try and get that new set of eyeballs onto it.
And I think in a lot of ways, like Saeed is really, really good at doing that. Like and because the stuff that he does and that we do is quite technical and quite scary sometimes, I think if you can bring a bit of fun, a bit of creativity, some pop culture references, I think that can work really well. He's sort of joking about there being an OBS dance one day. I shudder to imagine what that would look like, but maybe.
Do it. You be the one. Start it.
And I just want to acknowledge that, I guess Roy's had heard sort of similar rumblings about Rumble too. So there are some great comments that I kind of want to come back to in some of the next segments, but we'll get to them eventually. But I guess, and even the repurposing part of this is like, if you do have stuff that you can go in and repurpose and remix and all the rest, then it's often a really good idea to do that. And again, I feel like I'm the Saeed fan club today because I'm always really impressed by what he's doing. And he's done so many sort of trainings for smaller groups, and he's going in and repurposing a lot of that for YouTube. And like, I don't know, I feel like he had maybe 30, 40 subscribers a few weeks ago, and he's up to 150 already. So he's doing great stuff. And check out the Facilitator channel on YouTube if you haven't already. But yes, I think the other part of this, and again, I was going to touch on this later, but let's do it now. Depending on how you create the content, whether it's in app, for example. Like, we know that music licensing arrangements vary quite dramatically from platform to platform. So if you've got a song that's been burnt into your video and you can't get rid of it, there's probably a very little chance of you taking that same content from TikTok and then posting it straight onto YouTube without sort of negative consequences. So just keep that in mind too. Are there any things that you think people should think about in terms of moving stuff if they have used like TikTok or CapCut and some of the resources built inside of that?
I mean, similar to having the music baked in, you can have from most of the main platforms out there, if you try to just download the video directly from the platform, it's going to get a watermark on it. There's a variety of tools out there that will get you around that, or if you're savvy enough just to edit outside of the app itself, or you can do that and then have your base there and then take the clean version and post that to everything. And generally with all of the apps, it's better if there's like text on screen and stuff. It's better to actually do that inside each app. So like put it on there so that you remember to do it, but then once you're inside the app uploading it, copy and paste it on top of what you've already put so that it actually registers with the app itself. So it bumps you up a little here and there. All of that kind of stuff. The more you do in the app itself to build the video, the more priority they tend to give you, especially I've noticed on Instagram. But yeah, you don't want to just reply to someone's video on TikTok and be like, that was great, download, and then put that onto 5 different platforms, because it's going to have the watermark, it's going to have whatever the music is. If it was a stitch, it's going to be a weird shape that doesn't play on all of those other platforms really well. So, take that, with a grain of salt. And like, I like to do everything in CapCut for now. And then you export it to TikTok and it saves a local copy without a watermark on it immediately. So you can just take that and run with it.
I guess one of the things that confused me a little bit was, as someone that barely ever does anything on my phone in terms of actual content creation, was that CapCut on the mobile seemed to watermark your content in a way that it doesn't on desktop. And I had some really confusing conversations with different people, not sort of appreciating that was a thing that was happening. So yeah, I guess just be mindful of that. And I guess the other thing too is
there's like an end card that you can easily delete, and then once you have two options when you go to export. One is to export with a watermark, and one is to share to TikTok. If you share it to TikTok, you can immediately close it out and go to your photo album, and there is a clean, unwatermarked version that has been saved on your phone.
Nice. So there's potentially some nuance there that you might need to be mindful of. I guess the other thing too, and I probably need to go into the archives and look at this person up, but there was a female comedian. She'd been posting her sort of segments from her stand-up comedy to reels on Instagram. Everyone was loving it. Somebody told her she needed to have a YouTube channel. So she started taking that same content and posting it on YouTube and started getting a whole bunch of comments saying, you know, she's not funny and this is the worst comedy ever. And immediately she was like, oh, this is, you know, this is just sexism. But the thing that actually happened that she ultimately worked out was the reels were longer than YouTube Shorts would allow. Right. So often it would show the setup for the joke and then cut off the actual joke. And I'm not exactly sure what the workflow for her uploading these actually look like. But yeah, I think there is a danger sometimes in uploading stuff and not watching it back because, you know, you may skew your results there a little bit too. So
yeah, you definitely know the time limits on the different apps because YouTube Shorts 60 seconds and really 59 seconds is the limit on that no matter what. But also you have there's a toggle between 15 seconds and 60 seconds, and depending on the version it will not automatically correct itself.
Definitely some things to keep in mind. So I know you've started a whole bunch of these comments. Did you want to speak to any of them now, or do we do that in the next segment?
I think we should do this tech troublemaker one.
Okay.
Just giving him more screen time, definitely. No, just because it was related to what you were saying about music and stuff. I think the big this is fine. Like Epidemics, God, I can't talk. Epidemic Sound, and there's a few other royalty-free sites out there that names are escaping me. That is great fix if you're just looking for music in general to use. A lot of what people do is like a sound that is trending, and so they'll jump on that. So in that particular instance, this wouldn't be the fix, but it might be. Like you might just be like, well, this video would still play if I can just, like it. It depends. It really depends. A lot of the things that happen on TikTok are like related to lyrics and stuff like that. So it might be a fix. It might, for general videos, but probably not for a lot of trending ones. I think that's the statement.
And I think the broader lesson from all of that though is just be mindful that you have the relevant rights for anything that you put in your video. I mean, there are all kinds of services out there. One of the weird things at the moment is there are some AI music generation tools that create things that are so derivative of each other that they're kind of setting off all the copyright things. It's a bit of a nightmare. And you know how much I love talking about AI at the best of times. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. We're going to come back and talk about, some of the other platforms that you might want to think about and how you might want to move those people over there. And really just have a consistent experience of your brand across the internet. So as soon as I remember which one of these I was going to click on, let's just say this one. We'll be back in just a moment.
I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
And that's a promo for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, the podcast all about showcasing your expertise through content creation. You can learn more about that one over at johnlacey.com, but this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking about content longevity and repurposing and what actually happens when platforms go away. But I just want to check in with the chat. Hello to Claire, who's joining us over on YouTube. Great to see you. Saeed, and we'll talk about this more in the next segment, but he said, I finally listened to you and started repurposing my content.
Nice.
Awesome. Love to see that. Okay, so, and Insomnia Doodles is in here saying, Team late. Better late than never, I suppose. Great to see you. It's been a little while. She did say something about Twitch Prime subs potentially going away, but that might be a conversation for another time.
I'll just say that I definitely have a video on my YouTube where I predicted that this was going to happen a few months ago. They sent out an email this morning. I haven't actually gone through the ins and outs of it, but that could be what's happening. For anyone who doesn't know, Twitch Prime subs were if you had an Amazon Prime account, you could link your Twitch account to that and get one free subscription per month on Twitch.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, not just apps that are going away, but
yes.
features.
That is one of those things, like, and even on LinkedIn, like, people are talking about this new exciting video feed, and it hasn't reached me, and I'm trying not to get excited about it because the sheer number of times people have hyped up these features and they've never seen the light of day from my experience. I'm just trying to set my expectations accordingly. Again, Roy is saying he's not trendy or viral. I feel exactly the same. It's funny. And when I started on YouTube a million years ago, it did feel like a popularity contest, and I felt like there were people that were always going to be younger and more charismatic and better looking than me, so I sidestep all of that stuff these days. Insomnia Doodles writes, I went viral a couple of years ago, but that was the flu. And I do have a sound effect for that, which I could have used if I was a little bit more organized. Okay, so let's and again, I just want to check in with, so Claire is saying that she's uploaded stuff to YouTube with audio from Instagram Reels. And aside from monetization being switched off for that Reel, it doesn't seem to have any impact. Are there other issues to be concerned about?
For the most part, that's it. Like, there are some rare occasions where it's not just that the monetization is turned off, but you do get a copyright strike. For the most part, with shorts specifically, that doesn't seem to happen as much. I haven't heard of any of those getting copyright strikes, just demonetized. So not a huge difference. I know on other platforms like TikTok and I think Instagram, they will mute certain videos if it's got a sound that either has been, DMCA'd or like some other reason. So there's also that potential issue. But yes, they're not like account threatening concerns generally.
Okay, cool. Walter says LinkedIn would be a great alternative if they would provide replayability like YouTube. Walter, you can actually go in and watch previous LinkedIn Live sessions. They will stay there as a video unless you go in and delete them. So people can watch them after the fact. The only exception to that is we do have LinkedIn audio rooms, and those aren't recorded. I believe some of them might be recorded for just LinkedIn internal purposes, but if you weren't there for the live audio events, you can't experience it afterwards, but you certainly can with the video. So unless I'm misunderstanding something, let me know in the chat about that.
I assumed he meant the sort of DVR feature that YouTube has, so you can scrub back on a live stream while it's live and see something that happened 10 minutes ago if you missed it. But that sounds more reasonable that it was that.
I think you can, and in fact, just anecdotally, I sometimes watch the same stream on YouTube and LinkedIn at the same time, and on YouTube and LinkedIn, and I guess the LinkedIn experience is a little janky still, unfortunately, because in some ways that's where I want to build my audience, but it is always like sometimes the comments don't reach the third-party tools that we use to stream. and I don't see comments until after the show is finished. But I think you might be able to do that. I'm not entirely sure, but we can sort that out later if you like. Again, Claire is just saying that the reel would make maybe 3 cents, so she's not super concerned about that, which is probably fair
More
enough.
than mine. Yeah.
And tech troublemaker Roy's being a little snarky here. Ooh, reels on LinkedIn. Who asked for that exactly? I don't know. I mean, in some ways, my toxic trait is that I will unironically watch every Microsoft PowerPoint video that TikTok puts in front of me, even though they're all about the same 2 features of PowerPoint. So I don't know. I'm a little nerdy, and I do like to see video content. And I guess the nature of LinkedIn is such that you're mostly seeing things that are either extremely popular or from people you know. And I just wonder if there isn't a way to bridge that. But again, I haven't got that feature yet. I don't know what it's going to look like. So I guess we'll do its own thing. But let's there's so much going on in the chat, and it's wonderful. We'll come back to it in a second. But I guess, yeah, I mean, it's so good that we've got so many people in the chat. We love it. And we will recheck in with that in a moment. But I just want to talk about, if we know or suspect that a platform is going away, if we're hedging our bets, if we come at this with the understanding that social media is basically rented land, like how can we sort of, I guess I've already alluded to the fact that I'm a big fan of just sharing my content as widely as I can reasonably do so. But I guess we need to let people know across all the platforms, all the various places we are. And ultimately, I guess, move them to the things that we have a little bit more control over in terms of our website, our mailing list, maybe even a podcast feed. So I think in some ways you want to have, you don't have to have the same content everywhere, but I think you need to have a consistent experience, like a brand experience, so people will recognize you on different platforms when they see you. I guess, Sam, like, do you have any advice generally on how to let people know that you are in different places? Because most of these platforms don't really want you to leave.
Right. Yeah. It can be a tricky thing, especially if you're pointing to another platform that is its equal. You will definitely get, sort of shadow banned or played down upon. Like that video will, if you're on YouTube, you're going to send people off YouTube, and that's going to take a hit to your watch time hours, which is very important. So yeah, if there are ways to get them to do that without directly doing that, like a QR code that goes to an email list, so that's happening on their phone from their computer, great. That's an awesome thing to do. Also, in general, from my own experience, trying to just migrate people and be like, oh man, Mixer's shutting down, follow us on Twitch. You're lucky to get 10% of those people, especially in a live streaming, in a live streaming world. Because generally not everyone who's following you is ever going to see you again live, because most people are not live 24/7 like I am. And so, you're only ever catching 10% of 10% anyway. So yeah, that's a really hard ask to go, I know you're already eating dinner at Burger King, but I would love for you to come over to KFC right now. Like it's not going to happen. So bringing them to like an email list or a Discord server or even a Slack, something that is not the same, but is a more community centric area, or a knowledge base like an email list would be, I think is the easier ask. And it's just something that you have in every single thing you put out there, right? Like it's at the end of every podcast episode. It's in the video description for every video, whatever it is. So maybe you it's something you build not as the panic move of like, oh crap, they just announced this is shutting down, I have 30 days. So it's just, something you gradually can fall back on and be like, great, this is the thing. This is probably also the thing that, unless you're just trying to push sales, that should be the goal, is like building up that, email newsletter or that Discord community. That is, especially if you're just doing content for the sake of making content and being a creator and just having fun, then that is the goal, is community building. It's not, viral video making, because that doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And again, Walter says the recent news on TikTok has really highlighted the
Exactly.
importance of building the email list with your audience. And I guess in some ways, it's interesting because TikTok recently has started just telling me, like, I swear 20 times a day, so and so is on TikTok. And I probably need to go in and connect with some of those people on TikTok and elsewhere as well. But, I mean, different people hang out at different platforms. And I think it's, I like to prioritize their consumption habits over my own for the most part. And there are people that will want to watch, there are people who want to listen, there are people that want to read. And I know potentially that can add to your workload, but I don't want to sort of hide my content or like the things that can help people away in places that they might not be able to get to very easily. But I guess the other thing too with TikTok specifically is whatever's going to happen, it's going to take many, many months. So I guess you do have an opportunity to start thinking and planning for that in a way that you probably didn't when Stickam or Mob Crush went away. Yeah. Like you've got some time to work with. So again, let's talk about some of those earned, those places that you have a little bit more control over. You're less sort of at the mercy of algorithms and, that kind of thing. Your website, for example, like what should people be thinking about in terms of having a home on the internet that they have a little bit more influence over, do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously this is going to depend on what kind of content you're creating, but if you can build out that website to be that community hub or to be that education hub, then that is, that's how you should be using it. Like social media is there for this is the sandwich I ate. Take a look at it. It's so cool. And then your website is like, here is my e-course. Here is, some really big information, like come back and check this stuff out. So, I think prioritizing that is always going to be better than just prioritizing like Twitter.
And I must admit, this is a place where I've kind of dropped the ball, and I don't have any excuse because my background is literally web design and development. So I've built my website, I've got systems in place, and I used to add every one of these shows as its own post. I'd write a little article about it, and I haven't done that in many, many, many months. So maybe that's something I need to revisit and pick up on. But I guess in some ways, like people hang out on social media in a way that they probably won't hang out on your website unless it is jam-packed with lots of extra information. So I still think it's worthwhile to have a presence in these places that people tend to congregate. And even when I take short clips from this show, for example, and post them on places like LinkedIn, in some ways, my goal isn't about getting a lot of views or comments or likes or whatever. It's really about getting people to see me next to a microphone and go, oh, that person can speak to a camera.
Right.
That's an important thing to remember. And again, I know my goals in particular are quite nebulous because I'm not really looking to make money or sell services at this point in time. But I think that is definitely something to do. But whatever touch points you can maintain with people, and I feel like I've said this 7 times already in the show, but some people just naturally hang out on Facebook, and other people are like, Facebook, I don't want to borrow it, or I deleted my account 7 years ago. And I think in some ways you just need to plant these breadcrumbs across the internet and say, hey, I mostly hang out on this platform, but I'll remind you that I exist on some of these other ones as well.
Yeah. I think, something that we've said in multiple shows is not to spread yourself too thin, which I almost always immediately back up with. But of course, register your username on that site. If you've heard it more than 3 times, get it. And case in point, a long, long time ago, there was another streaming site called YouNow. And I registered, Sam Proof. I actually did shows on the Sam Proof channel because my friend Andy worked there. And then not too long ago, somebody from YouNow actually reached out to the Kitten Cam, and I was like, oh, yeah, this thing. And I had already made an account at some point because I wanted to save my name. And it just so happened that I knew Live Space was going away. And I was like, well, and now I have the mental capacity and the bandwidth to both kinds, to let's see what happens with this. So a few weeks ago, or months ago, I guess at this point, I actually started streaming the Kitten Cam to you now, and it had a weird amount of quick growth. It like passed 500 followers very fast, and it already got monetized. They have like an immediate monetization strategy over there, but then we unlocked getting subscribers. So you never know, some things become new again. And that it's an interesting community for sure. It's got some very specific themes I won't go into right now, but it's not nearly as, polarizing themes, just things I would have been like, oh, these people like cats? Weird. I wouldn't have expected that.
All right, just want to check in the chat. So Royce says I point everyone to YouTube, even from LinkedIn, which gives me a lot of views, strangely. I actually don't think that's too strange, and I think in some ways, YouTube is a great destination. If YouTube ever goes away, I'm going to be inconsolable. But right now, that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
That would be the biggest hit of any of the platforms. I would be like, I'm going to a cabin in the woods, and that is it. The internet is done now.
Yes.
But I think,
say it's
go ahead. All right, before you read that, I was just going to say, I think of any platform, if you're going to make a platform and not so much a mailing list or a website your home, YouTube is the number one platform that I would choose for that, with LinkedIn probably being second, depending on your topic, because they have that sort of built-in mailing list type functionality, even though I don't use it. But it works well for a lot of other people.
And Saeed says there's nothing wrong with having information about your website, mailing list, etc. displayed as an end screen for a few seconds in your videos. I guess the other thing that, and I don't know if he still does this, but Roberto Blake actually started using, on YouTube, you have the ability to have a little graphic at the bottom right-hand corner of your video that's basically a subscribe button. He actually used a QR code for that one, and I've never tried it to see where it actually goes, but I guess that's potentially a thing you can do as well. So, so I guess in some ways, I think those things are great. There are opportunities everywhere. You don't know what platforms are going to become popular in the future. If you can reserve those usernames for free, then by all means do it. Keep a record of what platforms you're on and where they are, and probably ideally you'd have some sort of password manager for all of that stuff. But again, think about what you can, and we'll do this in the next segment anyway, but think about the things that you can already reshare to those platforms. I know you've highlighted some other comments. Were there any things that you wanted to bring up now?
Yeah, Sam? We can go over them next. Or, well, here, we should do, I guess, Insomnia's really quick, because those are kind of things we... Well, whatever. Insomnia started off with, I don't really have my finger on the TikTok pulse. Have either of you picked up any hints of where that community seems to, they will go after TikTok? So, not really. There's, a sponsored ad that shows up for a new platform. I think it's called No Space. That is like MySpace 2.0 is their strategy, is that's what they're calling themselves. And I'm like, A, that's a terrible reference. B, it is a mobile app only. So they're just going at the younger generation, because my phone's full. I'm not doing that without a desktop. And from what I've heard, people are waiting months on the waiting list. So I don't think there's a legitimate push toward a specific platform yet. I think a lot of people are still kind of in disbelief and just think it's going to go like the whole thing is going to be the band's going to go away. So I don't think there's a lot, of movement here yet. And then she followed up with any talks of folks potentially using VPNs to maintain access. Sure, that's been put out there. The biggest concern with doing this is there is, not to get political, but there is another bill that is a rehashing of the Restrict Act. And if that passes, then those people would get arrested. Actually, I think it's no, I think they would. I forget how it's worded. But yeah, right now, that's a legitimate way to do it if it goes down. But they've already got the back door locked on that. All right, go to the thing.
And I feel like we probably should say we're not lawyers and that was not
No,
legal
yeah.
advice. So yeah, I mean we genuinely don't know. There are more questions than answers at this point in time. We'll be watching this as keenly as anybody else. But you know, just keep in mind that these things are potentially issues in the future. We're going to come back and talk about repurposing in just a moment.
If you've been watching us for a while or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv.
And if you need live production services, Sam can definitely help you out with that. So let's talk about repurposing. And I think in some ways, most of us understand conceptually what it is. But I think what I think most people are really looking for is workflows, relatively easy ways of doing this. But before we get there, I just want to talk about my content library fundamentals, and that is one that you create some folder and file naming structures, and you keep related resources together. And you know, those things could be video file, like raw video files, edited files. They could be projects. They could be thumbnails, captioning resources. It's really important that you're able to find those things again when you need them. I've spoken about Camtasia, which is a video editing piece of software I have that actually has its own sort of library feature built in, and that's been really useful for me in the past. But you know, what do you think we should keep in mind in terms of repurposing? Like, does it even make sense for a particular piece of content to live somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think repurposing can take several different forms. It's not always just like, I'm going to take this video and post it from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook. You know, like there are themes that continually go around and just variations of like footage that can happen. So, you know, being able to find whatever you want quickly is just a good practice. Just having your media in general organized makes it easier to do new things. You know, like if something strikes you and you're like, oh, I want to start doing food reviews. Thank God I have organized all of these times I went to a restaurant into its own folder, whatever it is. But like, you know, with Cute Avalanche, we have specific videos that the video itself is new and different, but the sound effect under it and the sort of theme are these templates that have already been created. So I can just pop in the new video and, you know, drop it and render it and have it go out and have like one of those every month for half a year. So like that is in a sense just repurposing again with just a different, you know, spin on it. I got caught up reading chat.
Yes, I mean, there are all kinds of dimensions, and Roy mentioned earlier, make your content into segments. So you know, if you've got a longer piece of content, you can go shorter, you can splice out the key moments. There are all kinds of tools out there, including AI tools, and as much as I don't like AI, it's worth mentioning. I guess the other thing too is like, can you take a video and strip the audio out of it and use that as a podcast?
Right.
I'm kind of a bit of an audio snob at times, and one thing, and we don't even really talk about it too much, but we do, like Sam does take the recordings of this show and throws them up onto Spotify for podcasters, so you can actually go and listen to the show later on if you want to. Sometimes I'm not crazy about the audio quality of that, but that's just me being a control freak. And the thing about me as a consumer though, is I listen to exponentially more audio podcasts than I watch videos during a week because I can multitask. And I used to really think they were philosophically different things, but I've reached a point now where as long as you're explaining what you're doing on screen, you know, I can always go back and look at the actual video elements of that if I need extra context or further information. So I had a bit of an epiphany late last year. I started just putting my audio podcast up on as a LinkedIn newsletter, I had the transcript, I had the Spotify player embedded, and there was a person that clearly doesn't listen to audio podcasts that said, "Hey, it's so cool that we can hear you narrate the article." And I think about that almost every day since, because it just goes to show we tend to assume that everybody sort of exists in these little contexts that we exist in, and it's just not true. And there are all kinds of opportunities to take these things and put them in other places. So I hope that all makes sense. The other thing,
I mean, there's the whole, Gary V mentality of like, take one thing, make 90 things. So like, if you have the time, do it. Like, right? Like you start with a live stream like this, and you can break it up into, a dozen different shorts and 6 big YouTube clips that are VODs, regular format. And like, you can turn it into an audio podcast. You can then transcribe all of that, turn it into a blog post, take all of those sound bites, turn them into Twitter posts, and then make them into images with your face and a quote. You've seen all of these things. You've done one thing, and now all of the work is really what happens after it.
Mm-hmm. And so you just wrote, what's the worst thing that could happen? People not watching right. So I think, this is another anxiety that I think a lot of content creators have, is that they worry that they're pushing their content too hard. They're telling people about it every single day. But the truth is the algorithms are so fickle. I would say most people aren't seeing it the first 7 or 8 times. So you kind of need to get over that and really be quite unsubtle in the way that you make people aware of the things that you're putting out into the world. Saeed mentioned that there are all kinds of tools out there. My big thing, and again, everyone knows I hate AI tools, but my big thing is just check for the accuracy, because AI has a weird habit of hallucinating things that aren't true. So just make sure that you're not damaging your reputation if you lean too heavily onto those sorts of things.
But beyond the AI side of this, there's a bunch of automation tools like IFTTT or Zapier that can just do some simple things. Like if you make a YouTube video, it then embeds the video into a WordPress post, takes the title from the YouTube video, takes the thumbnail from the YouTube video. So it's not even doing generative stuff at that point, just, doing that sort of manual busy work that saves you countless minutes every month. So like, there's tons of things like that as well, which if you're interested in, I'm actually conceiving of a video series on IFTTT automations. So maybe that'll happen soon. We'll see.
And even little things like when a new live or a new video is sent to Sam's channel, like he has integrations that automatically tweet that out, automatically send that to Discord. And I'm a bit of a control freak. I do all of that stuff manually, and I probably need to get over that and just let some automation happen in my world, but I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, I guess in some ways the other thing, and I keep coming back to that idea of control and influence, and I think the other thing that I really want to leave people with is you've built, if you've been doing this for any period of time, you've built up some skills, you've built up the hard skills of actually creating the content, editing the video, posting it, promoting it, all those things. But you've also developed your presentation skills, your ability to communicate, and you've built communities in different places. So worst case scenario, if you do have to start from scratch, you have a lot of learning, you have a lot of experience, you probably already know a lot of people. So really take some heart from that. And just know that, you're not starting from scratch, and whatever happens in the future, you can be nimble enough to sort of roll with those punches.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I guess one other thing before I forget about it entirely, Saeed is saying that often the videos he sees are just updated versions of previous ones, like how to use OBS in 2003 and then 2004. So,
I mean, if it works, it works.
That's one of the other things that we talk about. Yeah, that's one of the other things we talk about, though, is it doesn't matter how many millions of times you've said something. A lot of people are only hearing that for the first time, and they do often need to hear what you've got to share.
Yeah, I mean, like in the video space, like when you look at your analytics for, whether it's a shorts or a VOD, for most accounts, if you look at the returning viewers versus the new viewers, it's mind-bogglingly small, the amount of people that have returned, and it's so many new eyeballs every single time. So why not, do the same thing, kind of iterate on it and do it over and over again, because it's something and you're passionate about. So just do it bigger and better every time, or more relevant every time.
And I think some people watching may know I had a network attached storage device that died on me just after Christmas last year, and a lot of those early video projects are essentially dead and gone now. And that was upsetting at the time, but the truth is my skills have developed to a point now where I would cringe to repurpose that content. It would be so much better for me just to hit record and do it again, or go live and do it again. So, wherever you happen to be, you have the ability to create content. So again, what do you have the ability to control? Your output, your ability to create things and share things. You don't necessarily have the ability to handle how they're controlled, or how they're, received, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But I think in some ways, I just want you to be encouraged by the fact that you've got those skills that you can fall back onto. But we've really enjoyed today's show. We've had so many people in the chat, and we really appreciate each and every one of you. But Sam, as we begin to wrap up, where can people learn more about you and watch your content and do all the good things?
Yeah, head over to samproof.tv. You can find all my social links at the top left there. So follow me everywhere so you don't find the void when those platforms all go away. And we didn't talk about cats hardly at all. So if you want to see some cats, head over to cuteavalanche.com. And you can find the 24/7 live streams over there. And thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great weekend. And John, where can they find you?
And if you want to catch up with me, head over to johnlacey.com. Again, there's a whole bunch of links at the bottom of all those pages. You can find me on YouTube and LinkedIn predominantly, but I do dabble in a lot of different places. So a whole bunch of OBS Studio articles, and the podcast is over there as well, so you can check that out. But thank you to everybody in the chat. We've loved the really rigorous discussions. It's been great to have you here. We'll be back next week. I don't even know what next week's show is about yet. We'll have a little meeting about that after this show, but we'll talk to you again soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and may the 4th be with you, wherever you happen to be watching this, and we'll talk to you again soon.